The Red Palace is not just an architectural marvel, it is a vital piece of Kuwait's history, reflecting its political, cultural, and social evolution. To talk more about that, let's welcome Abdullah Al-Ansari. He is a Department of Antiquities and Museum National Council for Culture, Arts, and Letters. So hello and good morning.
Hello, good morning.
It's really an interesting topic. It's not only for Kuwaiti people who would like to know more about the Red Palace, even all the people, all the residents actually will agree to know about the Red Palace, one of, let's say, the landscapes, as we mentioned, me and my colleague in Kuwait. So first of all, we'd like to know when actually the Red Palace built.
Well, the Red Palace was built in 1897 by Sheikh Mbarak al-Sabah. This was during a pre-World War I era, of course. It was built in Al-Jahra.
Yes.
Built, of course, in Al-Jahra specifically for two main reasons. The first being the defense of Al-Jahra, and as well as his own residence when he would visit the area. Al-Jahra, of course, was very important for the people of Kuwait back then. It was one of the few places in Kuwait where agricultural activities were being performed there. And so, of course, in the Arabian Peninsula, we have a desert climate. It's very harsh. Any area where you can have farming and agricultural activities is very important to the rulers. And so it was always their priority to safeguard the people of these few areas.
Well, you give us, let's say, a brief, actually, the reasons behind the building the Red Palace. So are there any more, let's say, reasons behind that really historical place?
Of course, threats from outside of Kuwait would typically happen on these faraway places, especially when you're far from the city. The Red Palace is located around 30 to 32 kilometers west of Kuwait City. And so it was a bit distant, so a garrison over there would always ensure the safety of the people there.
Yes, amazing. We always heard about, let's say, the Battle of Red Palace, and it's actually related to something really historical here in Kuwait, especially the new generation. They are not aware yet about that, most of them. So we'd like to know the historical events here in Kuwait related to the Red Palace.
Well, very briefly, the Battle of Al-Jahra, which it is known as, happened in 1920. In early 1920, May, there was the Battle of Humd, in which the Ikhwan army, in a border skirmish with the Kuwaiti forces, were able to defeat the Kuwaiti forces in early 1920. As a result of this early defeat, the people of Kuwait decided, under the orders of Sheikh Salim, the ruler of Kuwait back then, to build the third city wall of Kuwait to defend the city from outside attacks. And they built it very fast during the summer months, which was very tough on the people. Of course, back then we didn't have any air conditioner or anything, so it was very, very tough on the people, but they managed to pull it through. And by August, it was completed. Later on, the Ikhwan army came into the Kuwaiti borders and was preparing itself for a main assault on the Kuwait city. Sheikh Salim, using a very smart military maneuver, moved his forces over to Al-Jahra.
Yes.
Why? Because if he moved his forces in Al-Jahra and the Ikhwan wanted to assault Kuwait city, they would have to siege the newly built city walls.
Okay.
And it would be very difficult for them to siege the walls while there is an enemy force behind them in Al-Jahra. They would be able to flank them. And so what ended up happening was the Ikhwan were forced to go to Al-Jahra first before going to Kuwait City. And that is where, of course, the famous historical Battle of Al-Jahra took place, in which the encroaching Ikhwan army of about various sources debate about how many numbers there were, but most experts agree that there were around 4,000 men.
Yes.
And the defending force in Kuwait, led by Sheikh Salim Sabah, were about 1,500 men. The battle happened in two phases. The first phase was the defense of Al-Jahra village, and the second phase was the siege of the Red Palace itself.
Okay.
When the enemy army first came into Al-Jahra, of course, they immediately assaulted the village. The Kuwaiti defenders rushed out to the outskirts of the village to defend the civilians while they sheltered within the palace. That was the initial phase. Once the civilians were all secure inside the palace, they slowly withdrew into the palace. And then the siege began.
Okay.
Now, the siege was a very intense siege, very difficult siege. Wave after wave of the enemy forces tried to assault the walls. The building itself is a mud structure.
Okay.
Built, of course, in the typical Arabian architectural style.
I would like to ask you about that. It's really, first of all, it's an amazing story about the battle. We are so proud that we had, let's say, the generation who defends, let's say, the Kuwait back then, since 1897,
yes.
let's say. Wow, that's it's really amazing. So let's talk now about the design of the building. What actually makes it so unique? When you see it, like, let's say, this is the history of Kuwait. This is the buildings that were built in Kuwait back then.
That is correct. The building itself is square-shaped.
Yes.
It was built, of course, in 1897, as we said. It is a mud building.
Yes.
It's called the Red Palace due to the red clay that was used in constructing the building, which gives it, till this day, a red tint. It has three main sections: the Emir's quarters for his household, the one for guests, and the mosque area for the mosque and the imam to stay. There is a central well in the middle of the palace, as well as some horse stables on the sides.
That's amazing. Wow.
And especially this well was very important during the battle, of course. During the siege, supplies began to run out for the defenders. It was a 2-day siege, and nearing the end they ran out of fresh water, and so they were forced to drink the salty water from this well. What they did was they mixed in dates with this salty water in order to sweeten it so that they would be able to ingest it.
Okay.
It was very rough, of course, but later on, after sending riders for reinforcements from Kuwait, naval reinforcements arrive, as well as ground reinforcements would arrive at the palace.
Yes.
With these reinforcements and the defense and unrelenting spirit of the defenders, the enemy army, of course, realized that they could not achieve victory at Al-Jahra, and so decided to withdraw.
That's really great, actually. Again, a great story of actually. So let's talk now about the women exhibition. It can be started next Sunday. Is that true?
Yes, the weapon exhibition is now open for visitors, of course.
Okay, it's already open.
It's already opened. It opened alongside the Red Palace this past Sunday.
Okay.
It has it's comprised of two main halls, the weapons hall and the Battle of Al-Jahra hall.
Okay.
Of course, the weapons hall features many weapons dating back to 300 years back. All of these weapons were used in Kuwait and the region around Kuwait. There are different swords, guns, spears, axes, many weapons.
Wow.
Visitors can go and have a look at them.
As we can see in the screens, too many weapons there, actually.
Most of the weapons that people will be seeing, of course, in the weapons exhibition are from private collectors, most of them, that have been loaned to the museum. And most notable of these weapons, of course, is a gun that is a Lee Enfield gun. It's from the World War I era.
Oh.
It has the house sigil of the Sabah family in Kuwait, which is the claw of the eagle.
That's really an antique, actually. It's really an antique. And we saw some clothes there actually hanging in the museum. What are these actually?
These are the robes and traditional clothing of the Kuwaiti warriors, some of which who fought in Al-Jahra, the Fidawi.
Are they true uniform they wear, let's say, wore back then?
Yes,
or,
of course, as well as the weapons and the belts, of course, all authentic.
Wow.
Everything in the museum you see there is 100% genuine and authentic weaponry from accurate time period.
It's worth visiting, actually. We must to visit there. Actually, everyone can visit there. Is that true? We have to register to visit, book or something?
The museum is open to the public, free of entry. Same thing with all government museums.
Well, we advise all, let's say, the new generation, including me, actually. I would love to see the museum, the Women Museum, and I haven't actually seen in, let's say, in face by face, actually, the Red Palace, actually, so we have to visit there. So let's talk now about how, in your opinion, how does the Red Palace can really contribute, let's say, the tourism industry here in Kuwait, since the museum is really opened now?
The Red Palace is not only important for the people of Kuwait, yes, but also it has important lessons to teach, okay, for all peoples to learn. It shows solidarity and unity of the Kuwaiti people in times of war. Mm-hmm. It has many lessons to teach the people about how people come together in desperate situations. Mm-hmm. For visitors, many visitors like to visit historical sites of battles and castles in other countries. So this is our historical battle in Kuwait in our recent era of the recent history. Mm-hmm. And visitors can come and go and see the Red Palace, have a tour of it, a guided tour. And also inside the Weapons Museum, as I said, there is a hall dedicated to the Battle of Al-Jahra, yes, where they can get a detailed explanation of the battle with all the figures that contributed to Kuwait's victory in that battle. There's a documentary film that they can see, wow, very nice. Yeah.
So it really can help the people to understand the military, let's say, industry here in Kuwait through that museum. That's really true.
Of course, the military aspect, of course, of the battle, the tactics that were deployed, all are explained in the hall. In the hall, An example of this is that during the siege of the Battle of Jahra, the enemy army, there are many ways they could have tried to breach the castle, the palace walls. They chose to use pickaxes because the building was a mud structure. They tried to just break through it. Yes. However, that was very difficult for them, of course, considering that the defenders were firing down on them, so they were unsuccessful. But that's one of the tactics that they used to assault.
That's amazing. Well, I wish all the schools actually take all the kids and all the students as a trip to Red Palace. Do you agree with me, Abdullah?
Of course, it's very important. School field trips are an important part of a big part of our visitors to the museum, and it's very important for them to come and learn about their own history, about the history of Kuwait.
Exactly.
It's important to remember our history.
Remember our history and remember our heritage, actually. Thank you so much for being here in Good Morning Kuwait and explaining that really an interesting, let's say, topic and stories. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Big thanks and appreciation to our dear guest, Abdullah Al-Ansari. He is the Department of the Antiquities and Museums, National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters. Don't go away, dear viewers. Let's have the chance to break and then we'll move on.